Good morning. Good morning. Can I have your attention, please? Thank you, LA Scots Pipe Master Scott MacDonald, for that wonderful performance of Amazing Grace. A song my dad absolutely loved. Really appreciate it. Welcome. Good morning to the John Stephen Dahlem Celebration of Life. John, also known as Dad, Mr. Dahlem, Dr. Dahlem, Dr. D, Coach Dahlem, Boom Boom, Principal Dahlem, Lieutenant Dahlem, Uncle John, Johnny Boy, and Cuckoo, which is Hawaiian for Grandpa. Speaking on behalf of my brother and mom, it means so much to us that you all came this morning. What a crowd. I asked the staff, what's the most people you've ever had here? And I think we're exceeding that by a lot. So thank you for coming. Thank you to those who traveled from afar, and thank you to those that are giving up some of your holiday vacation. I'd like to thank Ann Dahlem, who assisted my mom in putting together this great event, and also helped with that obituary that I think really captured my dad's story. It's hard to believe he's gone, and we miss him dearly, but he certainly lived a full life and had a profound impact on so many. But today we are here to celebrate. As my dad is watching from above, the last thing he would want is for us to be up here talking about all his accomplishments. And you know the first thing that he'd do, he'd point to my mom, and he says it's all because of my mom, Sue, that he was able to do everything he did. So instead, he'd probably want to hear you all connecting with each other, telling stories, and laughing. So please, when we're through, stick around. We have the place till 2 p.m. And there's also food in the back, which I don't think anybody's touched. So please stay. As this is a celebration, we thought it would be great to recognize those in attendance today. So please raise your hand if you are or were a teacher. Very important profession. Thank you. How about a principal or school administrator? Are there any coaches in the room? How about wrestling coaches? How about wrestlers? How about Loara wrestlers? How about know my dad through the CIF, or California Interscholastic Federation? Any Boy or Girl Scouts here? How about Eagle Scouts? All right, and here's a humble brag. How many Dahlem Eagle Scouts do we have here? Go ahead, get your hand up higher, stand. Any veterans here? Thank you very much for your service. Anyone that grew up with my dad and let's say the years kind of through college here today? How about the SMCC, or the Santa Monica Camping Club? You'll hear more about them later. Anybody here ever go on a hike with my dad? How about it climbed a peak higher than 14,000 feet? How about climbed Mount Everest? Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. We have a lot here, but we have Bill Burke, who until not too long ago was the oldest American to summit Everest. My dad, as you recall, was the second oldest at the time. Phil Urschler, who's over here. Phil, I don't know where to start with Phil, but in 1984, he became the first American to climb Everest's north face. And he ended up soloing to the summit. That's not how the plan was supposed to go, but sometimes that's what happens on the mountain, so soloed. And Phil and his wife, Susan, were also the first couple to complete the seven summits. And they wrote a book about it. They wrote a book about it called Together on Top of the World. I highly recommend you purchase it. Phil didn't give me any money to say that, but I've read it, and it's a great book. And then there's Danuru Sherpa, who was my dad's guide on Everest. And Danuru and his wife, Palima, are here today. And Danuru has only summited Everest 16 times. Finally, how about all the Dahlems or extended family, including spouses, relatives that are here today? You may wonder why a bagpiper? Well, 1 week exactly after my dad passed, my wife Monica and I attended an anniversary event for our kids' preschool, and we stopped by an Irish pub beforehand to meet up with some friends. And when we got there, they said, you know, something else may be going on tonight, maybe a wake. And right after, in came a bagpiper. And it hit me. And I immediately texted Mom and Ryan. I said, Dad wants a bagpiper here today. And they agreed, and we had Scott, who was awesome. But why would he want a bagpiper? Well, you know my dad was a historian, loves doing his research, and loves the facts to be correct. And genealogy was one of his favorite things to do. In fact, I think some of you here who my dad's worked on your family tree, but he went very deep on ours. And we all know, of course, we're mainly Irish on his side of the family. I'm from the Bay Area, and I knew that Polly McCarthy came to Oakland in 1852. We're all very proud of our Irish heritage. And then my dad took a DNA test. It turns out we're more Scottish. So I think Dad just wanted to state for the record that we're mainly Scottish. So I'm going to start, and I know you probably can't see everybody, the pictures on the sides there, but just talk a little bit about some of those pictures up there. What was it like to grow up the son of John? So on the picture to the left there is my dad coming home from Vietnam in 1969. I'm 3 years old there. The next year, my brother Ryan was born. So we really grew up with that military influence in the family. Very patriotic, strong sense of duty, grit, self-discipline, and pride, which I think were stenciled on the wrestling room at Loara, and started to learn some of those expressions that you've heard in the program there. If you think you are beaten, you are. So really had an influence on how we grew up. And my dad worked very hard as a teacher and a principal, left to school early, got home late. If you were in the graffiti business back then, you really didn't get to appreciate your work, because if you did it at night, it was gone by the morning. And today that still sticks with me when I see a restaurant or a storefront that has graffiti. I just have such an urge to go to the hardware store, get some paint over it. And my mom was a domestic engineer at home, and she is the one that really held us all together and why we became the family that we became. Now, given my dad worked so hard and was often tired when he came home, our jobs, my brother and I, it was before the days of the automatic garage door opener, so we were the human garage door opener for my dad. And also, there were no remotes back then, kids, so we were the channel changer. Kids, change the channel. Which was great until the little knob thing fell off the channel, and then we had to use pliers to turn the channel. So that's what it was like growing up. And education, obviously very important to our family. Ryan and I knew from day one we were going to go to college. And people have asked, why Stanford? Why'd you end up at Stanford? And we asked each other, Ryan and I, and we can't remember. So I think we grew up in a Bruin household, Bruin and the Ducks. And so why Stanford? I think my dad played some Jedi mind trick or something. It was like, you want to go to Stanford? And somehow they let us in. Sports were also a huge part growing up. We used to love to go to the Loara contest, and my brother and I would always go on the field. Our dad taught us, my dad, he always ended up on, where he wasn't supposed to be at an athletic event or other official thing, and he would always just say, act like you know where you're going and you'll be fine. So, people would come up and say, hey, get off the field, and my dad's, Coach Dahlem. Oh, okay. So my dad, my brother and I played all the sports, and my dad didn't push us to wrestle, but we definitely grew up around the wrestlers. And we had an amazing childhood. Like my mom says, just gratitude for everything we had. We always had a tight budget, but some just amazing family experiences, including the 72-mile trek across the Sierras to climb Mount Whitney, and our summers in Palm Springs with Marty and Mary Johnson and their extended family, and John DeFries is here too. Given the tight budget, we tended to go during the hottest week of the year in Palm Springs, where you could cook an egg on the pavement, but just wonderful memories. And also I want to talk about kind of the extended family that my brother had with the students and athletes. Kind of took it for granted back then. It was just something normal, but we always had people stop by on the holidays, Christmas, and those people that my dad really impacted. And today I could really see, wow, that was really special. That just doesn't normally happen. So another picture up there that I'll talk about is the second picture, wrestling. So I thought I was going to play basketball in high school, which is during wrestling season. I entered as a freshman, 5'1", 92 pounds, and so my dad encouraged me to go check out the wrestling room where Coach Worski, who is here somewhere tonight, ran a great program. So I peeked in, and maybe I had a little advantage from all my years with the Loara wrestlers, but I started to wrestle. And so but I went to Catella High School, and my brother and I went to Catella. Go Knights! Which is the rival of Loara High School. So what happened when you wrestled against Loara? Well, my dad would go hide under the bleachers for that match. So this picture up here, it turned out that Loara and Catella both attended the same tournament, the Mid-Cal Championships in Gilroy. And one of my teammates was on another mat. Coach Worski was with him. So, of course, my dad just came out of the stands and sat down and started to coach me, which is great. Till my dad argued a call with the referee, and the referee looked at the scorer's table and said, take 1 team point away from that team, my team. Sorry, Coach Worski, I don't think we've ever told you that story. But that match was a tight match, and I was down by 2 points with a few seconds left, and I jumped a cradle for 2 quick near fall points to tie it to send it overtime. Of course, I'd learned that move from the Loara wrestlers. And I think this is my dad talking to me in that overtime, getting ready for overtime. And clearly I did not listen to him, because immediately I went down 5-0. And my dad, as I'm sure many Loara wrestlers in here have heard, he had a way of motivating you that was maybe a little bit different. Like, go ahead, just lie there. Yeah. Do nothing. Great. Yeah. So, as with many of you, it also motivated me, and I came back and won 8-7. So that was probably one of my most memorable wrestling moments. Have a picture up there of family. Our kids are very lucky for having Cuckoo and Tutu, as we call them growing up, and they'll be up here to speak in a minute. I'd like to close by sharing a little from the last few weeks before my dad passed. Thank you to everyone who asked to visit. Things kind of sped up at the end, and my brother, mom, and I really tried to get every good moment we had with my dad. I want to especially thank Teb Kusero, who represented the longtime friends that I mentioned earlier, known as the SMCC, or Santa Monica Camping Club. Some friends go back as far as elementary school. They have traveled together, laughed a lot, and supported each other when members of the group passed away, and definitely have been there for my mom. And listen to this. Since my dad's surgery in May 2023, Teb wrote my dad an email every day and kept writing even when my dad was near the end of his journey and couldn't write back. These emails weren't just a few sentences either. They were extensive and covered a wide range of topics. 2 days after my dad passed, Teb sent his final email. That was day and email number 551. Thank you, Teb, and all of the SMCC. Well, this is a celebration and want to keep it more light, so I can't end on that note. So I'm going to tell you, the last week that my dad was with us, there were 3 days we thought we had run out of those moments. 2 Buddhist monks were kind enough to visit and offered chants and prayers. And we think my dad really felt that, but still really no movement. And then on the 3rd day, I thought I saw his shoulders move a little bit. So I immediately called my mom and brother to come down. I think Dad might be moving, but still wasn't sure if it was just a twitch or not. And then he started to move his head around a little bit. And so my dad was here on the bed, and my brother and I were kind of looking at each other, and I can't remember who said it. It said, "Hey, what was that drill we used to do where you strengthen your neck and move your head around to get warmed up?" I kid you not, from the bed, we hear flops and spins. Nothing for 3 days. And for those of you who don't wrestle, it's kind of like a downward dog in yoga with your head on the mat where you kick your legs over and arch up, spin around and do it again. So I'm sure all the wrestlers here have heard flop, spin, flop, spin, flop, spin. The next day, Father Earl from my brother Ryan's old school came by to offer prayer. And now we still felt good. We had these moments with my dad, and my dad squeezed his hand. And then the next day, November 8th, my dad passed away peacefully with family around and a smile on his face. His UCLA Bruins, where his granddaughter Leila attends later that day and night, beat the Iowa Hawkeyes in football. And of course, it's the Iowa Hawkeyes, who are one of the greatest all-time collegiate wrestling teams. So that's all I want to share to start, but I'd like to introduce Dan Harmon, who is going to give a prayer. I should say Pastor Dan Harmon. Dan Harmon wrestled at Loara for my dad. He was an Empire League champion at a time when the Empire League was very strong. He advanced and was a CIF champion. He advanced and was a Masters champion, and he advanced to the state wrestling tournament where he should have placed. And why do I say that? My dad would agree. Well, the guy that Dan beat in the Empire League finals was a guy named Joe Gabri. Joe took 5th in state, so Dan should have placed. Now, why are all these things so memorable to me? Well, that year in the Empire League, the guy that took 3rd place was right here. And so in the final match of the Empire League finals with my dad under the bleachers, Dan beat me 4-2. Sounds like a really close match, except for the fact that matches are 6 minutes long. I spent 5 minutes on the bottom, not able to move at all. And I think the referee felt so bad for me and knew I was Coach Dahlem's son that he called Dan for stalling and gave me 2 points. So with that, I'd like to invite Dan up. Thank you.
Well, memory's a funny thing because I'm pretty sure I was never a league champion. I think I lost to Shawn that last year. So go figure. I'll take the honors, but all of us had up and downs and had our backs exposed at times on those mats. Good morning. I'm Pastor Dan Harmon. I'm class of 1984, Loara High School. I wrestled. My brother has wrestled under coach. And I'm really privileged to lead us in a moment of prayer and just a couple words of reflection, if you might permit me. You know, as we celebrate the life of Shawn Dahlem, there's just so much to be thankful for, and evidenced in this room of the lives touched and the impact. Remember the moments, hear so many stories, and reflect upon his life and legacy. And I know as we've talked, we want to see everyone inspired and encouraged by this legacy. Regardless of your spiritual background, the occasion of death is a sobering reminder of the frailty of life and the enormity of eternity. And death can be a dark mirror reflecting back to us our fears, weaknesses, and our powerlessness. But I'm here to remind us that God is a God of comfort and love. And I do encourage us all to seek him in the midst of your reflections, memories, your laughter, tears, and grief, both grief and gratitude today as we celebrate life. In my reflections this past 2 months, I was led to 2 Bible verses I just want to share with you. The first is found in the book of Hebrews, chapter 13. It says, "Remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. Christ Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever." Shawn Dahlem was one of those leaders to me, a man to be remembered and imitated, and gave a great example of life and leadership, one I still carry with me today, as many of you do. The other verse is found in 2 Timothy chapter 4, where the Apostle Paul reflects on his life serving God and serving people, and he wrote this, "For I am already being poured out like a drink offering. The time for my departure is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race, and I have kept the faith." You know, Coach poured himself out for so many of us in so many ways, going the extra mile to encourage and spur us on. He taught us how to work, study, strive towards achievement, encouraged us to run a good race. And now he's finished his fight, he's ran his race, he's wrestled his last. He's crossed the finish line, and we're here to celebrate that achievement and the legacy of his life. So let us pray together. Almighty God, Father of mercies and giver of comfort, we invite you here and ask that you'd minister to us your comfort and grace. Even as we celebrate and rejoice in John's life and legacy, we also acknowledge our grief and great loss. So be with us today, both in joy and grief, in this moment of clarity that life passes by all too quickly. We ask you to graciously comfort us as we mourn, and we pray as we cast our cares upon you that you will meet us in those moments. We thank you for the consolation of your love as evidenced by the giving of your Son, Jesus Christ, as an instrument of your reconciliation and forgiveness. Lord, we thank you for John, a brother, a husband, a father, a grandfather, coach, teacher, leader, and friend who was able to instruct, inspire, help, and guide so many of us. He always gave us a bigger vision, consistently imparted courage and strength, and gave direction and inspiration to our lives. So, Lord, we thank you for the many lessons you've taught us through Coach, how to work hard, how to prepare intensely, how to persevere, fight from being down, how to have intestinal fortitude, a winning attitude, how to battle hard, yet almost respect the rules and referees. The ref is always right. How to set goals, work hard, and not wimp out. How to live, love, and invest in others. So, Lord, we thank you for Coach Dahlem, who lifted so many of us beyond what we thought we could accomplish. Thank you for Sue and Shawn and Ryan, who shared him with all of us so generously. And may you particularly comfort them in this season of reflection and remembrance. Finally, Lord, we thank you for your goodness and mercy to us. And we're deeply grateful that Shawn Dahlem was in our lives. Amen.
Well, good morning. If you can't tell by my hairdo, I am John's younger brother, Greg.
And with my hairdo, I'm his older sister. Hair.
Oh, okay. Okay. Boy, just looking at the turnout today is just really tremendous. It's just the love and support that you're all showing the family, we're just so deeply touched. Susie and I are not used to speaking to such large groups. We're both retired bank employees that usually had much smaller audiences, and those audiences really only wanted to hear very short speeches from us. And the ones they liked the best, the one I remember the best, they only wanted to hear one word, and that one word was yes. And so, we didn't think we'd be up here today to do this presentation. John, this could have happened 50, 60 years ago when John courageously fought in Vietnam and was awarded the Bronze Star. Or it could have maybe have happened the last 10 or 15 years when he was on one of his mountaineering expeditions and something terribly had gone wrong. But we didn't think it was now because we always saw John as being very young, vibrant, engaged, and very vital. And so we thought that he would live for many more years. Yeah, he was in great shape. As far as, I'm sorry. Okay. When we read John's obituary, even we were very surprised as far as all his accomplishments. And we're not going to try to go over those with you today, but we thought we'd spend a couple minutes with you going over some of the very fun stories we had with John growing up.
Okay, Greg, let's go.
So,
We have some fun memories, and I'll start with one being the big sister. I enjoyed showing John how to do new things. One day, I decided to show him how to drive. To make our 49 red Ford convertible look cool, we loaded the trunk with bags of sand and even the end irons from our fireplace. We took off after a quick and hard acceleration and dropped the transmission. John and I had to draw straws to see who was going to tell Dad.
I now know why John always liked to buy new cars, and he was a conservative driver. I remember the first time, early memory with John, is that we were out on our parents' front yard, and I had just graduated from T-ball and was getting to the point of trying to learn how to hit a slow pitch baseball. And I was having problems, and I was probably John's first coaching assignment. And he was very, very calm, understanding, very empathetic. He shared with me that when he was my age, that he had gone through the same issues and that just to relax, which I did. And I just really felt his kindness, and I always really looked up to my older brother because he was always so friendly and encouraging in everything I did.
Okay. Well, for you wrestlers out there, I taught John some important wrestling moves. Well, you know, having a younger brother, two younger brothers, and we would, one time when I came back from for a semester break from U of A, and we were kidding around and kind of teasing, kidding, playing, and everything. And all of a sudden, John was getting kind of rough. And so I said, okay, that's it. You have to hold this.
Okay.
I wanted to get him to stop teasing me so much and everything. And so I gave him the knuckle rub. Do you know what the knuckle rub is? You take him, I got his head down in this rub here, and I rubbed the top of his head to make him stop. Okay, brother, that's enough.
No wonder John and I ended up being bald. I was also the lucky guinea pig for when my brother decided to go into the coaching of wrestlers. And so he would practice all these new moves before he'd work with his students. And one move in particular, and I don't know if this move actually exists, but it was called the grapevine. And somehow I ended up in a contorted mess on my back, and I remember being rolled back and forth, and under my back was John's fist. And so he didn't do it hard, but it was certainly something I didn't ask to have done again.
And I remember that.
Yeah.
I saw that.
To this day, I sort of think that that was probably an embellishment for his brother. So.
Our brother had strong ethics, love of family, and respect for our country. He was very patriotic. Talk about patriotism. If you ever traveled with John, you kept a few coins in your pocket in case he requested a penny to remember a fallen comrade on his graveside. He loved playing the Halls of Montezuma, Onward Christian Soldier, Amazing Grace, God Bless America, to name a few. He would even play them over his school's loudspeakers and at school's assemblies.
And that's not the only music that John would play, and I think a lot of people would say back in the day it would have been Elvis Presley, but it wasn't. It was Mario Alonso, the famous tenor from the 1950s. And John would go into our living room where my parents had a stereo, and behind the stereo was a large mirror, and he would play one song, which I remember on the long playing record, track number 3, and it was basically a German beer drinking song called Drink, Drink, Drink. And so my brother would be standing in front of the mirror, and my job, I was an early one of the manual remote controls. My job was to be down below holding the tone arm, so each time that the song had come to the end, my job was to take it back to the beginning.
Yeah, that's true.
And each time John would play this, he would turn up the volume, and he would be going back and forth, and we would get to the point where the music was so loud, the windows in our living room would be bouncing back and forth, and my mom would come in, and you would think that, what she'd probably say is turn down the music, but instead of saying that, she said, "John, why don't you put on Tom Jones? Let's hear What's New Pussycat." And so I always started thinking back about this story, wonder what the neighbors thought about these two songs, Drink, 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 What's New Pussycat, was coming in from next door. So.
Speaking of drinking song, John did not drink. Only on very rare occasions, at a family holiday event, he would order a Long Island iced tea, not because it was strong, but because it tasted like Coke. He loved to order Coke when we were out at certain times, and then he'd ask, "And is there a vintage year?"
John's early life, the one area that we really need to mention is his love of scouting. It was really, I think, the foundation for him to become a teacher, and he certainly learned a lot of leadership skills while he was in the troop. He loved the uniform. He would wear it to school, even though his friends, some of the SMCC group maybe too, would tease him about that a little bit, but he didn't care because he loved being in scouting and was very, very proud of the uniform. He was very fortunate, as was my experience and our kids' experience, to be involved in one of the best troops in the country, led by a very dynamic Boy Scout leader who was tough, but he really led with creativity, passion, and integrity. His interest for the outdoors was certainly sparked by the long week or 2 week hiking trips in the High Sierra, challenging but rewarding. He also participated in a couple jamborees. It's interesting to note that scouting was where John got his first paid job. He was a camp counselor at Camp Emerald Bay in Catalina, and he was paid $150. Now, this $150 wasn't per the day or for the week, it was for the entire summer. John really truly lived by the Scout oath, on my honor, I will do my best. I think all of you would say my brother didn't ever do anything halfway. He always made sure it was done to the best that anyone could. He certainly lived by the 12 Scout laws, and I won't mention all of them, but some of them noteworthy: trustworthy, loyal, friendly, courteous, thrifty. Now, as Shawn mentioned, during, especially in the early years of raising a family, he was very thrifty. But as years went on and he really got the mountaineering bug, I would say probably during that period of time he did spend a little bit of money, but I don't know if anyone here would fault him. I don't think any of us would go to Harbor Freight to buy our mountaineering equipment to go to Mount Everest. So, and another one is brave. He's certainly fighting in Vietnam and taking on substantial risk in those mountaineering opportunities were very brave. The Scout slogan for a lot of you, if you don't know it, is to do a good turn daily. And going through and thinking back when John first started in scouting, which would have been about 70 years ago, that 70 years times 365, that would be 25,000 good turns. And I am certain that he did as many more than that. I just look at how many people are here today, and I'm sure for a lot of you that he did something for you maybe once, twice. I won't ask raise hands 10 times, but we probably have 2,000 or 3,000 good turns right here.
Who could remember John with his incredible organizational skills and neatness? There's a little humor here, okay. One of John's first memories was when he was volunteering and organizing a drawer for our mom, in which he received high praise. This was the beginning of a life of tidiness.
He certainly was tidy. At family get-togethers, he'd be well known that halfway through Thanksgiving dinner, that you could hear the dishes going out in the kitchen, and he'd be out there. Or if we were having an outdoor party, that leaf blower would be coming out even before the dessert was served. And one year he was so tidy that my wife Karen left the car keys on the kitchen sink, and as we were about to leave, where are the car keys? And John had thrown them in a trash can in the alley. The problem is he didn't know which trash can. And so we were all out, and it must have been an interesting sight for the neighbors looking for those car keys. It was a lot of fun calling a locksmith at 11 o'clock on a Christmas night looking for those keys.
John was always busy, but rose to the occasion for us when we really needed him. John rarely talked about himself. He would invariably change the subject to you. You always finished the conversation feeling better because of him. I know that John inspired and encouraged hundreds of young people and old to achieve in life. One of them is for my grandson, who just graduated from ASU with honors and is looking forward to going for a successful career.
Well, I can certainly think of some other sons that were also inspired by my brother. John always had his priorities straight, his family first, his love of teaching and helping others second, and thirdly, to the two schools that he attended, UCLA and the University of Oregon. And I think he'd be very ecstatic as far as Oregon's current position, in that hopefully on January 1st that they win the Ohio State game and they go on to become national champions. I think he'd be a little bit less happy with the Bruins this year. My brother always spoke very highly of others, maybe with one exception, and that is if you were a Trojan.
We would be remiss if we did not recognize Sue for having the love, passion, and commitment to support our brother in his many pursuits. You were with him all the way. We are forever grateful that he brought you into our family. We love you.
Sue, I also have to say, you went beyond the call of duty dealing with John's diet. And for those who would know, no fish, nothing green, and John loved hamburgers. So Sue, being an excellent cook, would have to figure out 365 ways a year to serve a hamburger with nothing green, maybe nothing red either. I don't know if he went for tomatoes, but my brother was challenging when it came to his diet. I would like to sort of conclude by saying that we really treasured our times together with John, the conversations, the memories. You certainly live on through the impact that you had on us, and you have really changed so many lives for the better. You left the world the way you lived it, with dignity and courage. Thank you.
Well, that's going to be tough to follow, but hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming. We are the grandchildren, and we will each be telling one story about Cuckoo, or John Dahlem, as you know him. My name is also John Dahlem, and we have countless stories to tell, so I don't know why I picked this one, but here we go. A long time ago, maybe 15 years ago, Cuckoo took me and my older sister to the pool, where he had us each wear a pair of his pants, much to our confusion. At the pool, he told us he was going to demonstrate how to survive stranded at sea. He jumped into the pool, fully clothed, and then he took off his pants. He tied the ends of each leg and held it on the surface of the water with the waist facing down. He then swam under and began blowing bubbles into the waist of the pants, filling it with air. Once the pants had been inflated, he tied the waist, and boom, he had done the impossible. He transformed his pants into a flotation device. We were impressed. That was until he said, "Okay, now it's your turn." He tossed us in the pool, and we did our best to follow his instructions. Soon, I had inflated my pants. However, my sister struggled and was lucky to make it out of that pool alive. I remember thinking to myself, when am I ever going to need that skill? And sure enough, years later, when I was getting my swimming merit badge in the Boy Scouts, one of the requirements is to jump into the pool fully clothed, blow up your pants, and float to the other end. Some of the kids failed. Needless to say, I did not. And this story comes with a very valuable lesson, and that's you never know when you'll need to blow your pants up. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Holly, Cuckoo's eldest grandchild. While there are so many moments I could reflect on about Cuckoo, today I wanted to share one of the funnier yet deeply telling memories I have of him. I was about 13 years old and Tutu and Cuckoo were visiting us in San Francisco. By that point, I had been begging my parents for a dog for what felt like years. So far, the only pet I had was a white goldfish I had won at a carnival when I was 5 years old. Fast forward 8 years and this goldfish had not only survived, but had also grown massively. I was convinced she was invincible. After all, didn't goldfish only live a few weeks? Yet mine was still thriving. One afternoon, I came home from school, excited to see my fish, only to find her floating lifelessly at the top of her enormous tank. I was devastated. I think my parents were the first to figure out what had happened. Later, I discovered that earlier that day, Cuckoo had lovingly cleaned my fish's tank with dish soap, not realizing the soap was toxic to fish. I was heartbroken that my invincible goldfish had died, but I couldn't be upset with Cuckoo. He hadn't meant any harm. In fact, he had been trying to help by cleaning out the tank with kindness. This memory always sticks with me because it shows what kind of person he was. A man who acted with love and good intentions, even when things didn't go as planned. It's a small example, but I think it's a perfect reflection of the big heart he carried throughout his life.
Hi everyone, my name is Leila. Holly and Johnny are my older siblings, and my story is more like painting a picture of what it was like to have Cuckoo as my grandpa. And one thing I will miss having him gone. When Tutu and Cuckoo came to visit, I always knew they were here because I would find my room looking cleaner and neater than usual with a MacDonald's plastic toy on top of my bed. The fridge would also be stocked with Diet Cokes and See's candies too, of course. Whenever I hadn't seen Cuckoo in a while, he would greet me with a full hug and always ask, "So, do you have a boyfriend? How are the boys?" And I'd always get so embarrassed and quickly respond, "No." My sister Holly and I were just talking about how we won't be able to introduce our future partners to Cuckoo. And he won't officiate any of our weddings like he has for many people here today. He was the best judge of character and set an example of how a husband or boyfriend should treat you, both through the way he adored Tutu and through his stories and lessons he would teach his grandkids. Although we won't be able to give anyone the Cuckoo test, I'll always think of what he taught me throughout my life, and I'm forever grateful for the role model and loving grandfather he was.
Hello, I'm Peter, Ryan, and Ann's eldest son. When I first met Cuckoo, I remember his bright and even brighter clothing. Since the day I met Cuckoo, he made me feel welcomed and loved, and not my own family, but my new family. One of my favorite memories of Cuckoo was hearing his story about his time in the Vietnam War. I learned so much about the Vietnam War, the region, the history. He even showed me the maps of his battles and the battles he was affiliated with. But more than anything, I learned how tough and mentally strong my grandfather was as an individual. To what he faced and his positive attitude about dealing with the day-to-day struggles of the war. He was a lieutenant in the Army and responsible for hundreds of soldiers. He saw a lot of things, yet he didn't complain or want you to feel bad for him or think he was any more special than any one of us. Rather, he had a deep admiration for the men he served with, and especially those who didn't make it back. Later that year, my classmates and I went to Washington, D.C. for a school field trip. He had told me about his best friend, Denny Peterson, whom he shared a deep bond with and who actually passed away in Vietnam. In Washington, I was able to find his name on the Vietnam Memorial and do a pencil etching to bring back for Cuckoo. I know this gesture meant a lot to him, but it meant even more to me. Through his stories, he taught me the true meaning of courage and sacrifice, and I'm honored to be his proud grandson today. I love you, Cuckoo.
Okay, so I'm Ryan's daughter. My name's Ella. So growing up, I didn't play a sport, but I did ballet. But that did not keep Cuckoo away from showing up for all of my performances. When I think about how he was such a big sports fan, and no matter how small or big my role was, he would come and sit through the entire Nutcracker Ballet every year. He came to all my dance concerts at school too. He would ask me about my training and my technique just like I was a varsity quarterback. When I got to high school, I started cheerleading, and Cuckoo came to our football games to watch me cheer. My coach was very strict about game etiquette, and especially that the family was supposed to be in the stands. But that did not stop Cuckoo. Being a CIF official, he would walk around the field before the game saying hi to everyone like he knew them, which he probably did. He'd come up to me on the field, give me a hug, and start taking pictures of me and my friends and asking about our routines and maybe even the classes we were taking. I could tell my coach was a little frustrated, and I thought I might get in trouble afterwards. But honestly, Cuckoo was such a charming person that I think my coach wasn't sure to be happy or angry with the situation. And I love that he was always just himself, and I will never forget that no matter when or where, Cuckoo always showed up for me.
My favorite memory of Cuckoo is him attending all of my sports games if he was able to, and bringing me souvenirs from his travels around the world. And since his favorite school was Oregon, I want to say, go Ducks.
Hi, my name's Drew Zager, and Sue, Shawn, and Ryan asked me to represent the wrestlers. But Shawn, you forgot, besides Loara wrestlers, how about the Loara students? Yeah. Loara students? and Peter reminded me that Coach used to wear the craziest ties. And I have to have the boringest tie ever for this event, so I apologize for the tie, Coach. As I thought and reminisced about our wrestling days, there's three things that came up for me. Coach's capacity to love, Coach's passion for excellence, and a sense of urgency. But let's start out with a little wrestling humor. Do you know why Coach Dahlem's wrestlers make the best of friends? Because Coach Dahlem's wrestlers will never let you down. And however, even though we will never let you down, if you ever wrestle one of us, we will take you down with a double leg takedown. Coach played football, as you all know, at the University of Oregon and was an outstanding football coach of Loara for 12 years. While he was coaching the football team, he heard that the wrestling program was going to end. And Coach never wrestled in his life, didn't know anything about wrestling, but he loved Loara, loved the kids, and he couldn't imagine letting the program end. So he became the wrestling coach. And so he read a few books about wrestling, learned a couple moves, double leg takedown, cross-face cradle, as we all know. And he had us practice those moves over and over and over. And then he drilled those moves into us, and even though the other teams knew we were going to shoot a cross-face cradle, we were going to put them into, or we were going to shoot a double leg takedown. They all knew we were going to do these moves, but there's nothing they could do about it because we were so damn good at those moves. Coach had 820 wrestlers, over 15 years, 4 undefeated seasons, 8 consecutive league championships, a dual meet record of 55-1. Coach was inducted into the United States Wrestling Hall of Fame, as well as the California and Orange County Hall of Fames. Upon graduation, Coach gave us a card of his favorite quotes. And so most of the wrestlers have their quotes with them. Mine's been relaminated many, many times. And then also in your program, Shawn and Sue and Ryan put the favorite quotes. So these quotes I think about like literally daily, but they meant everything to us. So if you're a Loara wrestler, will you please raise your hand one more time? So thanks to these men were incredible wrestlers, and thanks to these men, Coach got inducted to the Wrestling Hall of Fame, United States. So big shout out to the wrestlers. Also to all the wrestlers, Coach wanted us to get together, and reunions are really important to him. And how many coaches do you know that over 40 years, who haven't coached in 40 years, have multiple reunions? And over the last 4 years, we've had 2 reunions. Just a testament to Coach. So Coach said he hopes we continue our reunions. So I'd like to commit to that, and I hope the rest of the wrestlers will get together. I know Sue will be there, and I'm sure Shawn and Ryan will want to be there too. And then after the celebration service, ask each of these wrestlers for their favorite quote, because we all have our favorites. So why were Coach Dahlem's wrestlers the best? Coach had to overcome that we were a 3-year high school, and most of the schools we were competing with were a 4-year high school, which is super important to a sport like wrestling. We were one of the smallest high schools, especially in Orange County, and we were competing with these really big, rich schools like Fountain Valley and Edison and these South Orange County schools and these Anaheim Hills schools, much richer than us. The reason Coach had the best teams was because he got us to believe in ourselves. He got us to believe in him. He got us to believe that we could and we would win. Coach became the most amazing wrestling coach because of his capacity to love. We understood his tough love. We loved Coach and never wanted to disappoint him, So we ran laps, wore double sweats before school. Most of us were cutting weight to make a lower weight class. And we were also sitting in the back of class spitting in a cup. And so, that's quite attractive to the females in the class and the teacher. Obviously, with all of Coach's amazing records, accomplishments, and achievements, Coach was passionate about excellence. Coach taught us to make smart decisions and to have a deep passion for excellence. As a psychology teacher, Coach gave us a confidence that he taught us to picture our upcoming wrestling match in our heads, completing the moves that we planned to make ahead of time, picturing the referee lifting our hand at the end of the match with the win. If you're able to picture a successful outcome and believe that you will win, it goes a long way to helping you to win. Coach taught us mental visualization, and the perception of our wrestling times became a reality. The purpose of life is to lead a life with purpose. Coach certainly lived his life with purpose. Wrestler Mitch Vance said what a privilege it was to wrestle for Coach. Wrestler Mike Beal said Coach banded people together. He unified his troops, his wrestlers, and his fellow educators. When you wrestled for Coach, you essentially became part of the Dahlem family. How many coaches that haven't coached in 40 years have these multiple reunions? The true measure of a person is how many lives they touch and impact. We all know that Coach touched thousands of lives. Coach taught us to have a sense of urgency, and that it will be tomorrow whether you work hard today or not. In Coach's passing, his final lesson was reminding us life is urgent. Life is short, it is precious, and it is unpredictable. Even if we are as active as Coach, none of us know if we have a day, a decade, or a century left on this planet. So, even if you're Leila Dahlem, no matter if you're Leila Dahlem, who is Sue and Coach's super smart granddaughter, or you're the oldest person in this room, we should emulate Coach and Sue by living life to its fullest, by traveling, by climbing your mountain, by living a life with purpose, by making a difference in the life of others, and by giving love the way that Coach Dahlem gave love to all of us. Thank you, Sue, Shawn, and Ryan. Thank you.
Dr. Dahlem is the kindest, gentlest, most giving soul I think anyone could meet.
He's a retired principal. He's a legend in the wrestling community as a phenomenal coach.
He was the first coach to get a lifetime achievement in Orange County history.
He's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame.
He's a veteran. He works with veterans still. He was in Vietnam, and
He is family first kind of guy. He loves his family and he's very proud of his boys, and they're both very accomplished. His grandchildren as well.
He's a fantastic husband and father, and which is always one of the things that I've had conversations with him and admired.
Besides marrying Sue, his wife, his proudest achievement would be climbing Mount Everest with his son. They are the oldest father-son combination to ever have summited.
He's gone on polar expeditions to the North Pole, South Pole.
The things he's done in his life, I can only imagine or dream of. I mean, he's just so adventurous.
I met him at a council meeting and was just so in awe over the experience that he had, the way he spoke to council, the credibility he spoke with, and just the genuine care for the wellness of the organization.
Even with people that come in that want to do look up history stuff in the back, they'll leave and he'll know their whole story.
Without Dr. D, I don't know how much history would really be around for this organization.
It's the history of CIF. Doc has done it all.
Anyone who knows the CIF knows Dr. D, and he's just so special.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rob Wigod. I was the 9th Commissioner of Athletics for the CIF Southern Section. And I first want to thank Sue and Shawn, Ryan, your families for giving me the opportunity to speak today. It really means a lot to me. I'm here to share my memories of Dr. Shawn Dahlem, my mentor, advisor, confidant, role model, example to try and follow, and most of all, special friend to me and to my family. Throughout my remarks, you will never hear me refer to him as John. I never called him by his first name. I had tremendous respect for him, and I never saw him. I was not equal to him. I looked up to him. I aspired to be him. And so he was always Dr. Dahlem, Dr. D, or simply Doctor in the way that I addressed him. I will do the same today. I'm here representing myself and the CIF community, many of whom you just met. A lot of them are here, over there, back there, and I know Shawn already asked them to raise their hands. Our Wrestling Coaches Advisory Committee, I see a bunch of you guys over there, and I know I'm speaking for you, and I'm speaking for the staff and all of those involved with the CIF community. And you can look around this room to see who has been impacted by and benefited from their relationship with Dr. Shawn Dahlem. Like me, they're here to say thank you for helping us, for caring about us, and for always being there for us. To give you further insight into how much he meant to the CIF community, I offer the following words. From CIF Southern Section Chief Financial Officer Mitch Carty, Dr. Dahlem, John, or Doc, was the most selfless, thoughtful, caring, loving, passionate, determined, and driven individuals I have ever met. He was a rare gift to all of us. And while I will miss my dear friend tremendously, I will carry his spirit with me all the days of my life. I love you, Doc, forever. From CIF Executive Director Ron Nochetti, who this morning was at the Sacramento airport waiting to get on a flight to be here with us, and unfortunately the fog canceled his flight and he was not able to join us. But his words, other than his family, nothing lit up John's eyes more than when talking about the CIF and how important it is that we understand the crucial role of high school sports in the lives of young people. He loved writing about CIF history, and he truly lived the mission of the CIF. We are incredibly grateful to Sue and to John's family for sharing him with us. From retired CIF Southern Section Program Coordinator Anita Fatma, who was Dr. D's next-door neighbor in the Southern Section office. I admired Doc, but what I appreciated and loved most about him was his gentle, generous, kind heart. He just endeared himself to people. He was humble, always interested in what was going on with others, but never liked to talk about himself. He left an impression on my heart, and I'm a better person for knowing him. And finally, from CIF Southern Section Assistant Commissioner Tom Simmons. The most amazing thing about Shawn Dahlem was he could care less. This was a man of incredible commitment and tremendous accomplishment. but he never, ever talked about it. So who was I in light of those achievements? To him, he always made me feel that I was the most important person on the planet. And now it is my turn. In my eyes, Dr. Shawn Dahlem defined the word leadership. In everything that he's ever done, he's been the consummate leader, a man who never hesitated to take a stand, who was willing to serve in any capacity that would further improve and enhance the experience of high school students and student athletes. I first met him when I became an assistant commissioner for the CIF Southern Section in September of 2000. One of the sports I was in charge of was wrestling, and Dr. D was a longtime member of the Southern Section Wrestling Coaches Advisory Committee and the CIF State Wrestling Advisory Committee. On the day of my first meeting with the Southern Section coaches, Dr. D came into my office before the meeting, and he could see how nervous I was. But he told me, don't worry about it. I'm going to sit next to you at the front of the room, and I'll be sure to let you know what you need to do. But by him sitting next to me, he was sending a clear message to the coaches in that room. He was letting them see that he was on board with a new guy, and that he would look out for the coaches to make sure that we would all be okay. I never forgot what he did for me that day. And from then on, I had a great relationship with the coaches on that committee. They trusted him completely, which allowed them to give me a chance to earn their trust as well. Upon his retirement from the education world in 2006, Dr. D became the historian of the CIF Southern Section and all things CIF. You know, he was too bright. His mind was too active for him to sit idly by in retirement. And so he poured himself into researching the history of the CIF Southern Section to the point that he was in our office almost every single day. He gave us countless historical tidbits, as he called them, stories about the events and the people from our past. And he left us with so many precious memories that his legacy will live on forever. How fortunate it was for all of us to have him so close, to be with us, and such a vital member of our family. Special memory, Dr. Dahlem, for me, was after returning home from his climb of Mount Everest. He came into my office with a Ziploc bag. Inside the bag was a rock from the summit of Mount Everest. I was incredibly honored and touched by him thinking of me and actually bringing that incredible souvenir home. I wasn't sure what to do with it. How do I commemorate this? My wife Kelly suggested we mount it on a plaque with a picture of Dr. D and Ryan, which you can see here. It's not their picture from the summit. You remember seeing that picture, you couldn't see their faces. You couldn't, they were just like, you know, hidden behind their helmets and masks. So there's a nice picture of Ryan and Dr. D that's not with helmets on, and it does commemorate the date of them summiting Mount Everest, and I treasure this plaque from the day I got it, and I treasure it even more today. One other side note, my wife took it to the trophy shop and told the man behind the counter, this is a rock from the summit of Mount Everest. If you lose it, you will have to go back there to get another one. Thankfully, that didn't happen. In 2011, as I went through the application process for Commissioner of Athletics, it was Dr. D who sat down with me to help me prepare for the interviews. He was the one who discussed with me where we were as an organization, and more importantly, where we could go. He challenged me to be proactive, to be forward-thinking, to always keep the best interests of students and student athletes at the forefront of everything that we do. His help and support were invaluable and played a huge part in me being selected for that position. It did not stop there. Throughout my tenure as commissioner, I was so grateful to have his wisdom, his guidance, his counsel, and his friendship. I sought him out on many, many occasions to get his feelings and opinions on things. I had conversations with him that I did not have with anybody else. I relied on him. I trusted him, and he never let me down. He truly cared about our organization, and I know he truly cared about me, and he wanted to do everything he could to help us be successful. The one constant in every conversation we had, it would start with family. Whatever we had to talk about, we always began with each of us updating the other on the latest goings-on of our loved ones. An example of how Dr. D would view things, he found out our daughter Haley was beginning the college application process. Once he heard that, he immediately volunteered to meet with her, to help her with her applications, to help her compose her essay, and to do all the things that she needed to do. She was accepted into every university she applied to. And no doubt Dr. D had a big impact on that. Another example is when he found out our daughter Kate was getting married in Virginia, and I was asked to officiate the ceremony. The very next day, I had a packet of information from him on how to get ordained in the state of Virginia, several examples of wedding officiant scripts, and even more personal suggestions that he had from the many weddings that he had officiated. There was just no limit to his thoughtfulness and genuine care for me, and as he called them, the Wigod women. In closing, there's a song entitled You Raise Me Up, whose words I believe capture the lasting and lifelong impact that Dr. John Dahlem has made on all of us. It goes like this. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. Thank you.
I'm Jim Doti, a longtime friend of John's and a fellow climber. And I'd like to begin by saying that John was one of the finest persons I've ever known. I met John when I was climbing Mount Aconcagua. Our team was going up, his team was coming down. The two Southern California teams met kind of in the middle of the mountain, midway up, and we started talking, and at the end of our conversation, John, who I just met, said, we have to get together when we get back to Orange County. Well, we've all had that kind of a comment, empty promise. But for John, there was no such thing as an empty promise. I got back, he called me, we got together, and as they say, it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Not long after that, he was my coach on my climb, preparing me for my climb on Mount Vincent in Antarctica. And that's a climb where you have to not only carry a heavy pack, but pull a sled. So it was John's theory that I needed to get trained for pulling a heavy sled. So he got this huge tire, like from a, not an automobile, not for an automobile, but for like the biggest semi-trailer that you could ever imagine. And there was a chain that attached to me. The chain was like maybe the chain that holds the anchor on the Queen Mary. So I would pull that, and John said, you know, you have to keep a steady pace. You could go slow, but keep a steady pace, and don't stop. And I thought to myself, how am I going to do that? But you know, I needn't have worried, because we did this over at Peters Canyon. Some of you have been there. There's that big hill on Peters Canyon, and that's what I was supposed to go up and down, up and down. And I would have to say, on average, every 30 seconds, we would have to stop so John could meet and greet and talk to his former students, the football players, wrestlers he coached. So it was a breeze. I was just standing there, listening to him chat with all of these people, and I said to myself, remember, I had just met him. Who is this guy? He knows everyone. Not only that, everyone loves him. And I thought to myself, if I could have only had a coach like that when I was in high school. And I guess better late than never. And he did teach this timid tentative climber and made me a more confident, stronger climber. No wonder I felt when I got to know him better that his students treated him like a rock star. And that so many things he did for me, and probably for many of you as well. He put together a log that had the history of my mom and dad's and their parents, my grandparents, trip from Italy, not trip, but their diaspora, they're becoming immigrants, and where they came from, what boat they were on, the ship's log, history that our family didn't know anything about. He found somehow, some way, a photograph of my wife Lynn's father, who was in the Battle of Guam, and it was a photograph, him in the Battle of Guam. How he found it, I have no idea. He would regularly attend the Chapman economic forecast that I was one of the presenters, and he would take copious notes, and a few days after the forecast, he would send me these notes, every forecast. And the following year, I'd have to present a new forecast, but I'd have to review, what did I say last year? I don't remember. And rather than going back to my notes, I used John's notes, which were more accurate than my own. I've asked myself, he did all of these things for me. Where does he carve out the time? How does he have the time for all of this? Well, I know one of the explanations for John's secret sauce is right here, sitting in front of me, and that's his beloved wife, Sue, is always right next to him and through thick and thin. I can go on, but I'd like to kind of conclude by telling you what John taught me about leadership. Now, John didn't come out and say, Jim, here's what I believe about leadership. He was far too modest a person to do that. I didn't even know. I'd become a good friend of his. I had no idea that he was a decorated commander in the Vietnam War. And the only reason I found out about that, I read somebody else's book that had a reference to John and his service in the war. So it was difficult to get anything out of him, picking his brains about anything, but nonetheless, I learned a great deal about leadership. He didn't come out and say it, but in watching him interact with his former students, the members of the teams he coached, how he was a father and a loving husband, and how he treated me as a friend, I realized that leadership is not about strategy, it's not about planning, it's not about taking calculated risk or all the other malarkey you read about leadership. In the end, leadership is about treating people with respect and dignity. And in teaching me that, he made me a better person. I recently completed a book about my 25 years as president at Chapman, and in the final chapter, I talk a little bit about John, and I'd like to conclude with a paragraph from that passage. But before I read it, I have to give you context. There is a very popular place on campus called the Doti Strupa climbing wall, named for me, but also my successor, Daniele Strupa, who's the current president of Chapman. And many of you may have used it in preparing for your climbs, especially if you had to do rock climbing. So with that as context, I'd like to read from that paragraph and make a note that this is the first time the family is hearing this. And I quote, "One of the neatest parts of mountain climbing is the people one meets along the way. A dear and special friend I met on the slopes of Mount Aconcagua is Shawn Dahlem, himself a climber who made it to the top of all 7 summits. My good fortune in meeting John as a result of climbing makes all those tough times trying to get to the summit well worth the effort. When John passed away, President Daniele Strupa and I decided to add his name to what will now be known as the Dahlem Doti Strupa climbing wall. And I've just seen the size. And let me end it and say that it's not so much an honor to have John's name with us on the signage, but it's an honor for Daniele and me to have our names along with John's.
Thank you, Jim. That's amazing. You got me with that one. Whew. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here today. All the remarks that have been shared so far have been amazing. My brother and I thought we would bookend the speakers, sort of starting and ending with the sons. And when we had to decide who was going to go first and who's going to go last, of course, you know how those brother negotiations happen. Shawn said, "I'm going first." And that was it. So here I am going last. But we really appreciate you being here today. I know it's getting warm in here. Your legs are getting a little tired. And for some of the Loara wrestlers, you might be having some flashbacks. It almost feels like a Loara wrestling practice. But thank you for hanging in there. I promise I'm last, and we'll get back to being able to mingle and just have a party, which is what I know my dad really wanted. We're grateful for the outpouring of love and support we have felt since my dad's passing. The notes, the cards, the online messages, we've read them all, and they really mean a lot to us. Thank you so much. And I've enjoyed just even hearing some news stories today from my relatives and others speaking. I want to add one quickly about my dad did clean up prematurely at times. You heard about the fish tank, the losing the keys. Brings back a memory of the 4th of July, back when you could go out and light off fireworks, in the street. And we would light off a firework, and it would go off. And then we'd get ready to light the next one. My dad would clean that one up. And we just had this rhythm. We would light one off, then he would go out and clean it up, and we'd light one off and go out and clean it up. So we're all looking at the street, watching the fireworks, and all of a sudden we hear everybody, "Oh my gosh." And they point over here, and his trash can is now on fire. Because he was putting the fireworks in there too soon, and it caught a whole other fire. Then we had to go put that out, so my dad moved quickly. There was no doubt about it. My hope here, just in sharing a few thoughts as dad, my perspective about my dad, and then a few thoughts of where we all go from here without him. To put it simply, John Dahlem was my hero. The fact that he was also my dad, and as an adult, my closest friend, makes me extremely grateful. At 6'2", he was larger than life. He seemed like he was 7 feet tall in any room. He had a commanding presence, yet was incredibly disarming. When he talked to you, and you've heard this, he made you feel like you were the center of the universe. I've been fortunate to feel that my entire life, and I know many of you felt that with my dad too. When he would meet someone, inevitably he would ask, "Where did you go to high school?" And no matter where they replied, he would always say, "That's a great school." It didn't matter. Fountain Valley High is a great school. And then he'd say that the Barons, right? Fountain Valley Barons, and the colors are red and blue. He just loved doing that, the trivia. Costa Mesa High School, that's a great school. The Mustangs, green and black. He just loved that sports trivia. He knew schools so well. And he really loved it when it would be a connection back to one of the schools that he led. But beyond that, he always wanted to know more about you. What was your next challenge? What were you interested in? And he was always inspiring you to take on things even bigger than you thought possible. And I know that was a big part of everything I've accomplished in my life. My dad and my mom just helping me see even beyond what I thought was possible and instilling that confidence. There was a wrestler on Facebook recently who wrote, "I always felt I could win with Coach Dahlem in my corner." And I think that confidence that he instilled in all of us really captured my dad. As you heard, he was also an avid historian. Along with high school sports, he loved researching people's individual histories, and you've heard that even from Jim. Many of you know what that was like. You'd say something, and all of a sudden, the next day, there'd be this notebook that would appear, that it was somewhere between kind of like, this is your life, and like a confidential research dossier, that you would get back. But he just loved people's stories and making them feel special and researching them. You heard that he was a decorated military veteran, awarded the Bronze Star in Vietnam. And he rarely talked about that growing up. I think he came back and was a little bit of a sign of the times at that era. He kind of moved on and quickly got into coaching, but I know he still led in the same way that he did when he was in Vietnam. But I remember I'd get up on Saturday morning. He would get up really early, never slept in, really early. He'd be out there mowing the lawn, and he'd have his fatigue pants on. And I just thought, still wearing those pants, but out there mowing the lawn. And then, of course, he'd yell for Shawn and I to come down and help with the weeds. But he just was a go-getter always. But I think he instilled in us a deep respect for the military, and especially a solemn reverence for those who didn't come back. And you heard from Peter about my dad's good friend, Denny Peterson. He was, of course, an incredible educator. There's a saying that students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think my dad really lived by that. He took a deep interest in the lives of his students. He was very effective as a teacher, a mentor, and a coach, as we've heard. I, too, found myself in the sport of wrestling, as Shawn mentioned. As a freshman at Catella High School, I was maybe hitting 5 feet tall. I weighed 83 pounds. The lowest weight class was 98, so I was giving up 15 pounds in every match. But I went out there with my dad in my corner every time. At the end of the day, I was a better wrestling coach, like my dad, than I was a wrestler. And one of my great joys was being able to coach and follow in his legacy and coach the CIF finals at Masters and at State as well. And of course, any wrestling tournament I would be at, even coaching, my dad was there anyway, but he would make his way down whenever I was coaching kind of onto the mat. And this happened so many times. I'd be coaching one of my athletes, and it'd be right in this crucial part of the match. And I'm thinking, what do I say? And all of a sudden, this booming voice would come from somewhere else and just say, cut him loose and stand up. Just some advice, like the perfect thing to say. And the wrestler would do it, win the match, everyone would cheer. And then they would come off, walk past me, and go to my dad and say, thanks, coach. And they were right. He was such a good coach. And there I was with the bus and doing all the other things, and he was getting all the credit, but he had this perfect advice at just the right time. There's a reason that he's in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame as a coach. Later, he took great satisfaction in mentoring younger teachers and administrators, and I know it was a real point of pride for him that many school leaders today, many great schools around, are being led by educators that were mentored by my dad. This was really purpose work for him. My dad was also a connector, and you heard a little bit about that. He stayed in touch. He sent notes. He made introductions. We went on these climbing expeditions all around the world, and a lot of times you meet your team, you climb the mountain, and then everyone sort of gets on the plane and goes away, and Jim referenced this a little bit as well. But our Mount Everest team, since 2010 when we summited, every year my dad sends a note out saying, what are you up to these days? And he gets updates from all 24 members of our expedition team, and then sends out an update of all the amazing things. And we've traveled and visited with members of our team. They've come to California to visit. He was a connector and kept people connected. Obviously, he was never afraid to take on big challenges, climbs, hikes, marathons. He finished his PhD in 3 years, just sped right through that. Even managing his calendar when there were conflicts. The California State Wrestling Tournament used to always be in the same weekend as the LA Marathon, right? And it's sort of like, well, choose. Are you going to go to the state tournament, or are you going to run the LA Marathon on Sunday? So many years, he'd go to the state tournament Friday, Saturday, watch the finals, drive all night coming back home, get up the next morning and go run the LA Marathon Sunday morning. Just incredible drive and taking on big challenges. Part of my dad that made him such a hero was he was a great adventurer, as you know. He loved the outdoors. You've heard about the Scouts. When we would, our upbringing, we'd get in the VW bus and go drive off for these great adventures. And he inspired us a love of the outdoors that really has stuck with me. And this led to bigger climbing adventures that really culminated in a 10-year journey to try to climb the 7 summits, the highest mountain on each of the 7 continents. And for me, it just seems like, the two of us, would have done that, or maybe I would have done it anyway. I would have never done that without my dad. Really, all the things. I know a lot of you feel the same way, your accomplishments. It was my dad who said, we could do that, or would if, or you'll do that. I could see you up there. And along with Phil Urschuler and Danur Sherpa, we would have never had those summits without those two, and of course, with my dad. People often ask me, there's a picture up there of us on the summit of Mount Everest. What was that like? And it was sort of this just ethereal moment to stand on the top of the world. The summit of Everest is about the size of, a dining room table. And to be up there together was really a highlight and defining moment of my life and my relationship with my dad. We've told the story many times. We presented about it. He likes to tell the story that we had a rough summit night. It was a storm. And he says there was sort of this role reversal of father and son. And he started asking a question that I had asked him so many times on long road trips in the VW bus. How much farther is it? We go a little farther. How much farther is it? We're making our way to the summit of Everest. And there were times when he was, understandably tired and a little hurting. And I'll never forget, he always sort of would tell the story like, he almost didn't make it and everything. I'll never forget, we were getting high. We were above 28,000 feet. We came to sort of vertical pitch. It's not the Hillary Step yet, but it's called Tenzing's Rock. And we stopped at the bottom, and he was pretty tired. And I turned to him and said, Dad, this next part looks pretty tough. What do you think? And I thought this might be the moment where he said, Rye, I've had the course, or why don't you go do it for the family, or whatever, and I'll go back down with Danuru. And Dad, what do you think? He looks at me and he just said, Ryan, go. I'm right behind you. There was never a doubt that we were going to summit that mountain and make it back safely. So he likes to tell the story that it was sort of, never knew it was going to happen. He was going to summit, and I was worried about myself, making sure that I could be up there with him. But we really love celebrating our Everest anniversary every year on May 24th, and I know this one's going to be poignant, but will continue to be special. I'm so grateful to have been raised by my dad. My brother and I have talked a lot about the fact that we shared him with so many others. Someone put on Facebook recently, you have one father, but you can have many dads. And I know that our dad was a dad to many who are in this room. And it was sort of special. And now thinking about that, reflecting on the fact that we got to share him with the world. And finally, I've thought a lot about what would I say in this moment, And I'll admit there are times when I just ask my dad, Dad, what should I say? And I knew right away the response I got. He'd say, Ryan, there's been enough said about me. Talk about your mom. So I do want to say a few things about my mom. He would always say, she's the strongest one in our family, and he was right. You think about keeping the home fires burning when he was away at Vietnam with a young son at home. All those wrestling tournaments when he was gone all weekend, and sometimes my mom would load us up in the van and go join. And certainly as he and I were climbing mountains around the world, gone for weeks and even months at a time, it was the strength of my mom that really gave us the backing to be able to have such success. And for all the love that my dad shared in the world and spread around everyone in this room, at home that was being nurtured and filled by my mom. And that was a big part of his success. And by the way, my mom ran the LA Marathon too, several times. She trekked to Everest Base Camp at 17,500 feet. She hiked 150 miles in Bhutan. She paddled in Patagonia. So just know it wasn't sort of like timid mom at home keeping the home fires burning. She was out making things happen as well. But so much of my dad's success I know he attributed to my mom. And we're grateful to you, Mom, for that. And I know Dad would want me to end there. So a final thought, where do we go? There's a huge hole in the world, no doubt, without Shawn Dahlem in it. But this room, just looking around, is filled with love, care, support, and optimism. It would mean a lot to our family to unleash all this positive energy into the world. Pay my dad's investment in you forward. Take an interest in the life of someone else, especially a young person. Be that touchstone, that person who makes all the difference in their life, that person who sees something in them before they see it in themselves. I think my dad's greatest legacy will be the multiplied impact that we all have on the lives of others. And I'll just wrap. You heard that my dad passed away peacefully at home. Shawn referenced it. Eyes wide open with a smile. And, later they sent a nurse over to, sort of make things official, and really wonderful nurse. My mom and I were talking to her, and we said, "Where'd you grow up?" Anaheim. I'm not kidding you on this one. Where did you go to high school? Loara High School. We said, "That's a great school. Home of the Saxons. Red and gold." Thank you so much for being here today. I'd say to my dad, rest in peace. I know that's not his style. He's off on his next adventure. Please stay around. We've got food. The bar will be open again. Thank you so much for being here to honor my dad, and have a great day.